This is Mission Control Houston. Over the past week, we've been talking a little bit about how NASA's now accepting applications for its next group of astronauts. And we have with us here today a special guest to talk with us about astronauts' applications and what it's like to be an astronaut. This is Jeanette Epps, who is a member of our most recent class of astronauts, and I think officially an astronaut now, right?
That's correct.
Well, thanks so much for joining with us. We really appreciate it. Tell us a little bit about your background, first of all.
Well, I have a bachelor's degree in physics, and then I went on to graduate school, and I earned a master's and a PhD in aerospace. And I've worked for Ford Motor Company, and I even worked for the government. I worked for the CIA for about 7 years.
You probably can't tell us about that, or you have to kill us.
Well, I won't do that this time. I've been cleared to tell you, hey, I worked at the CIA, so it's
Okay.
okay.
Well, good. So, at any point in that time, had you always wanted to be an astronaut, or had that crossed your mind at all?
Well, I think every kid wants to be an astronaut, and in some way, shape, or form, I was just probably a little different in that even as a kid, I thought it was impossible to do. And I think as I got older and I met people who were applying to the astronaut program, I thought it was even more impossible.
Really, you had all
And
those degrees and worked for the CIA, and you thought it was impossible to become an astronaut?
yes, and looking at the past astronauts and the people who are astronauts now, they're amazing people. And maybe I never thought I was one of those people. And even though I work towards the goal of at least becoming a scientist, when that little seed was put into my brain as a kid that you can be a scientist or an astronaut, the scientist part seemed feasible, but astronaut, impossible.
Well, so what changed?
Well, working hard through the years and just developing myself. I think I had a friend, Leland Melvin, who encouraged me to apply,
A
and
fellow astronaut, right?
that is correct. And every time I said, "Well, I don't think." I'd be selected, and but I had other people say that to me as well, and I never thought I'd be selected. But I realized that this last time, back in 2007, 2008 timeframe, it may be my last chance. So I said I'm going to just go for it.
Okay. So, what when you decided to go for it, what did you do? What was your first step?
The first step was to at least apply. I have many people come to me and say, "Oh, I've always wanted to do that." And when I ask them whether or not they've applied, they always say no. And I'm like, "Ah, well, you'll never get it if you don't apply."
Okay. Well, what's the application process like?
Well, the application process was easy initially. You just go online and you submit your application, and you put in every detail you can to make sure your application looks great. But then it's the waiting that gets you because you got to wait to see if you get an interview. And getting an interview is it's just a feeling that I can't describe. And once you get an interview, you go through the first interview process, which is nerve-wracking because you're sitting at a table and it's just you and you have about 11 or 12 people around you and they're questioning you. But we also had to, give good answers and things like that. So that was just the first round. And then for us, we had a second round of interviews that we were called back for. And getting the second interview was even more nerve wracking than the first time. And so the second round of interviews meant they were really considering you and you went through all the medical exams. And so that was a little bit different from my understanding than in the past, where I think if you were selected for an interview, you went through the entire process. Whereas this time, they had two separate interviews. And so the second time, only 120 people came back, and we were all given the physical exam, and we had to do another interview.
So I think, let's see, originally several thousand people applied, right? They narrowed it down to how probably a few hundred for the first interview, then 120 for the second interview, and then it came down to just how many of y'all were actually chosen in the end.
Well, there were 9 Americans, and so it is a percent of a percent of a percent to be selected, and so that's one reason why I never thought it was possible. I mean, when you think about the process and how many people apply, and then to be one of the few that's actually selected, it is when you think about it, it's amazing to be here. So
But it clearly does happen, right? So you're here.
I am truly an example of that. So I try to encourage people who have the right background and are interested, I try to encourage them no matter what, just apply, and you never know what happens. You'll never know what happens until you at least try and apply and go from there.
Okay. Well, so as far as the interview process, was it different than other jobs that you've applied for? Was it the same kind of questions, or a lot more complex or harder or detailed?
Well, the questions were interesting, and I think the method that they use, and maybe I'm wrong, but you can plan your answers, and you could try to tailor the questions and try to get them to ask you certain questions that you've practiced. But they have such a rapid fire method of asking questions that you just start answering, and you have no choice but to be yourself.
And be truthful, I
And
guess.
be truthful, exactly. So I think the interview process was a little different because we went through medical, a lot of physical things as well as intellectual things as well. So this job is different in that the physical aspect is included in the job.
What would you say was, I don't know, the hardest part, or the craziest question you got, or the most memorable part?
Well, one of the during the interview process, we got to work out with Peggy Whitson and several other astronauts, and just the level of fitness of these ladies was amazing.
Really?
Yes, and that was for some reason that always stuck in my mind, and even to that today, when I think about the interview process, that's one of the first things I think about. But then even beyond that, sitting at the table and having to answer the questions uh, and just being very nervous. But you get to the point where you just have to answer, and you answer honestly and truthfully because like I said, that rapid fire method works really well.
Okay. Well, so you made it through the application process. You became an astronaut, or an astronaut candidate, I guess. First of all, what happened then?
Well, we came on board and we started from day one. It became busy. We went to land survival training in Maine. And then after that, several of us who don't have a pilot's background, we went off to Pensacola for 6 weeks. And we learned how to basically just be safe pretty much in a T6 out of Pensacola. They taught us a great deal. But, in 6 weeks, you can't become a pilot in command of a plane just yet. So we get back from that and we start into the T-38 training, which has been amazing. I mean, when you think about it, you're sitting on a ejection seat and you're sitting in the back and you get to go, in some cases, Mach 1. So it's a supersonic jet, and that's been great. But then after that, we started into some scuba diving, preparing for the EVA training, robotics, and then beyond that, we had a lot of the ISS systems that we learned. It's an amazing space station. So and then after that, we started in the Russian. So learning the Russian language also has been very interesting.
So let's see, learning to fly, learning another language. I think I saw a photo of you in a spacesuit in the water at the pool where we train for spacewalks. It's quite a variety of activities, huh?
It's amazing amount of activity. I wouldn't trade this job for the world. It's one of the best things about this job is that you get to do so many cool things, and that's just in 1 month.
And that's just the training to prepare for the real job, right?
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay. Well, what's been your favorite part so far?
My favorite part is actually probably one of the toughest tasks I think most people will tell you in the core, which is the EVA stuff. Working out at the neutral buoyancy lab and the thought of getting into a spacesuit, going into the water for 6 hours, and practicing, maintenance tasks on the station, practicing installing new equipment on the station. It is one of the toughest jobs you'll ever experience. I mean, for 6 hours you're in the suit and you're working. The suit is 300 pounds alone, over 300 pounds, and it's sometimes you're not so neutrally buoyant, so you do get a little tired, and I'm understanding that, just a little tired. So 4 hours into this, you're thinking, "Wow, I've got 2 more hours." But when you come out of the suit and you realize what you've just done, it's a good feeling.
Yeah, I bet. Well, how how do you anticipate using your background, your degrees? I know, let's see, I think astronaut applicants are required to have a bachelor's degree in math, science, or engineering. How are you going to use that?
Well, I think most of the people in the Corps and the people that came in with me, we all have these varied backgrounds, and I think all of that experience plays into being able to adapt to whatever situation we'll put it into, but also in order to do the science that's required on the station, in order to understand the science and actually go through and do the experiments in a detailed way and produce good data for the scientists on the ground. And all of that data will be used for future exploration. So hopefully we can all contribute in some ways, shape, or form to the future of exploration in that sense.
I imagine so. And you anticipate going to the space station at some point, or what are your hopes for the future?
Well, I am hoping, but that's up to my boss, Peggy.
Okay,
So I
understood.
am hoping to go, and I'm looking forward to. I mean, 6 months on the station, you can do quite a few things, and you do make it your home in that 6 month time frame. So I'm looking forward to the space station being my home for 6 months.
And in the meantime, what are you doing?
In the meantime, I'm a part of the ISS integration branch, and I'm learning to become a Capcom.
Okay, so you'll be
Um,
working here in this room soon, maybe?
I'm hoping in the springtime to be a full-time employee in as a Capcom.
Well, I look forward to seeing you here. And I'm sorry, you said the other thing was working in the ISS integration branch?
That's correct, and
What does
that's
that mean?
looking at the ISS systems and looking at issues with the systems, and working with the other components of like the EVA branch, robotics branch, and all of us working together to perform the task that's needed on the ISS.
Okay. And I guess, we talk about a lot how the International Space Station's getting us ready to go further out into space. And I'm sure that's something that a lot of the astronauts are thinking about a lot as well, right?
That is correct. I think in the near term, though, I think a lot of people are looking forward to the space station, well, flying on the Soyuz and going to the space station, but also working with the commercial crew office and looking at what's on the horizon.
Okay. Well, any final advice for anybody who's thinking about applying or has already applied and maybe is anticipating hearing back soon?
I have two pieces of advice. One is at least apply. Just make sure you apply. You never, if you
Can't
don't
hurt, right?
apply, yeah, you'll never get in. So at least apply. And the second thing is to have a career that you're working in currently that you're very happy with, because you never know what will happen, but you want to make sure at the end of all this you're still happy.
Okay.
So
Were you think you're happy where you ended up?
I'm extremely happy where I ended up. I don't think there's another job like it. So
Okay.
yeah, extremely
Well,
happy.
thanks so much for talking with us. We really appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Again, this is Jeanette Epps, a member of our most recent astronaut class. And as we've been talking about, we are now taking applications for our next astronaut class. You can go to www.nasa.gov/flynasa to, first of all, find out more about the astronaut application process. And then also, you can find a link from there to the Fly NASA blog, which Jeanette is featured on at the moment. She has a blog and some photos of her time so far here in the astronaut office that you can take a look at there. Again, that address is www.nasa.gov/flynasa. Thanks so much.